Our first reading this morning is from Hebrews 10, verses 16 through 25. This is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws in their hearts, and I will write them on their minds. He also adds, I will remember their sins and their lawless deeds no more. Where there is forgiveness of days, there is no longer any offering for sin. Therefore, my friends, since we have confidence to enter the sanctuary by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh. And since we have a great priest over the house of God, let us approach with a true heart and full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. And let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching.
Our gospel reading for today comes from the book of John, chapter 18, verses 28 through 40. And before we read it, I want to give us a little bit of setting and a little bit of set up. This is the trial of Jesus before Pilate. It's part of the trial of Jesus before Pilate, not the whole thing. And so where we are is Monday, Thursday. Jesus has been arrested. Good Friday. It's early in the morning. Jesus has been arrested. He's been taken to be tried before the Judean authorities, and he has been brought to Pilate, and that's where we'll begin our story. Now, as John tells us this story, he uses this phrase, the Jews, and he uses it in sort of a very pejorative way. But of course, we remember that Christ was a Jew, and the disciples were a Jew, and so we have to pay a little bit of extra attention to understand what John is talking about. When John says the Jews, he is saying all of those people in authority who have aligned themselves against Christ. It is not a Jewish thing, but a thing of those who have made themselves enemies of the truth and of the gospel. Historically, Christians have read this as an attack on Judaism and have blamed Jews for the death of Jesus, and it has led to horrible things: pogroms, massacres, ghettos, and eventually the Holocaust. And so we have to be extra careful as we read it, not to ascribe those negative things to Jews or Judaism, or to connect the Jews that John is talking about, the Judean authorities who are against Christ, with the Jews now who are our brothers in faithfulness to God. And so when we hear that phrase, there are things that are worth doing. We might translate it in our head to say, the authorities. Or we might remember our own sinfulness and say, ourselves, whenever we set ourselves against Christ. Because insofar as we have chosen to be in sin, we too have participated in Christ's crucifixion. So I invite you now to listen to the word of God to you in John chapter 18, verses 28 through 40. Then they took Jesus from Caiaphas to Pilate's headquarters. It was early in the morning. They themselves did not enter the headquarters so as to avoid ritual defilement and to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered, "If this man were not a criminal, we would not have handed him over to you." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him according to your law." The Jews replied, "We are not permitted to put anyone to death." This was to fulfill what Jesus had said when he indicated the kind of death he was to die. Then Pilate went into the headquarters again, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me?" Pilate replied, "I am not a Jew, am I? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not from this world. If my kingdom were from this world, my followers would be fighting to keep me from being handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here." Pilate asked him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate asked him, What is truth?" After he had said this, he went out to the Jews again and told them, "I find no case against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at the Passover. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews?" They shouted in reply, "Not this man, but Barabbas." And Barabbas was a bandit. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, God.
I don't want to litter. Pilate was tough. And it's a good thing that Pilate was tough, because Judea was a tough province to rule. They held on to their religion fiercely. They were in almost constant rebellion, and the pockets of guerrillas were incredibly hard to root out. Judean rebels were one of the few peoples that ever delivered a defeat to Roman legions that were not Roman legions. And at the Passover, Jerusalem was an absolute powder keg, because all of this rebellious sentiment, all of this religious fervor was gathered into one place. Jerusalem's population more than doubled at the Passover. And it was Pilate's job to keep order in the city. Now, Pilate had been doing this for years. The first time that Pilate entered the city, there were riots, because Pilate had brought the Roman standards with big statues of eagles into the city, and the people would not suffer any idol to come into their city. The next year he tried again, but he did it at night, and still there was violence. But eventually Pilate learned his lesson, because Pilate was tough. When he took money from the temple treasury to build an aqueduct, he hid soldiers in plain clothes, and when the people began to dissent and complain, the soldiers threw off their cloaks and began to beat the population with clubs. Pilate was known for being tough. He was known for his brutality. In fact, he was censured by the emperor himself, by Tiberius, for being too brutal in his actions against the Jews, which makes it so bewildering that Pilate gets so turned around by one worthless criminal. Now let's set the stage briefly. The authorities that we talked about before, who are charging Jesus with something they won't say, they refuse to enter Pilate's headquarters. To do so would make them unclean, and they want to eat the Passover later that evening in peace. Jesus, on the other hand, has been brought in to Pilate's headquarters. I guess nobody expects him to be able to eat the Passover. So Pilate goes out to the authorities, and then he goes in to Jesus, and then he goes out to the authorities again, and then he goes in to Jesus again, and then he goes out to the authorities, and then he goes in to Jesus again, and then he goes out to the authorities, and then he goes back in to Jesus. 7 times he crosses his threshold. 7 times he goes in and out, and in and out, and in and out. He has lost his mind. He is the most powerful person in this story, right? He has the full weight of the entire empire behind him. He has soldiers at his command, and here he is going in and out and in and out, pleading with people, asking them what he should do, like he is a gopher, a servant. Should he have brought them some coffee, maybe? Pilate knows what's right. He interviews Jesus, and he says it right there, "I find no case against him." But for Pilate, being right doesn't matter nearly as much as being on top. He knows the truth, but the truth is only useful when it's on his side, and it's a thorn when it's not. Sure, he'd like to do the right thing, but there are other things that he has to consider. How will this affect his career? What will people say about it? What will they say in Rome? What will they say in Jerusalem? What about these people outside of his door? What will they say? What can they do? And so he's torn. He's going in and out and in and out. All he has to do is say the word. He can choose to do the right thing. He can choose to do the wrong thing. But what ends up happening, instead of having control over everything, because he has the power of the entire, of the world's greatest empire behind him, instead of being able to control everything, he loses control of everything because he is willing to do anything that it takes to keep that power. Pilate wants to know what he should say to get ahead. He wants to know what the chief priests will think. What will the people think? You know, they welcomed Jesus with open arms just a few days ago. How is this going to affect his future? All of this playing constituencies has caused Pilate to lose his center, to lose his anchor. And so he feels like he has no choice. He isn't deciding what's right. He knows what's right. He's deciding what to do. And for Pilate, these two things have become separate. Deciding what is right and deciding what to do. But they should not be separate. Deciding what is right and deciding what to do should be the same thing. And it's best revealed in this exchange that Pilate has with Jesus. Pilate's trying to get to the bottom of this. He's trying to figure out what's the angle that he needs to take. And so he says to Jesus, "What have you done?" And in the course of this exchange, Jesus responds and Jesus says, "For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth." Pilate, who will go back and forth across the threshold 5 more times that very day, says to Jesus, "What is truth?" Now, there are a ton of ways that we can interpret this. Is Pilate saying he doesn't care about the truth? What is truth? Is Pilate saying that truth is made by the powerful history that's written by the victors? What is truth to me? Has Pilate looked at himself and realized in this moment that he has lost the truth? Did he sense for just a second that there's more to life than what you can squeeze out of it? And he's looking at Jesus in hopes that he might find the truth there before he snaps back to what he has to do, or at least what he thinks he has to do, what power demands of him. However we want to interpret it, Pilate has lost the connection between truth and duty. He's decided what's right, but that's not what he's going to do. What he's going to do is what he thinks is wrong. Even though he doesn't want to do it, he will. He will condemn Jesus to death. We can contrast Pilate in this moment with Jesus, right? Jesus knows the truth. This is why he came into the world, to testify to the truth. He's the least powerful person in this situation, right? He is an accused criminal under the penalty of death. And yet, Jesus has one commitment. He is unafraid. The truth isn't elusive to him. It doesn't change according to what he wants for someone or according to what somebody wants from him, even though he now faces the cross. It doesn't matter what Pilate says or does, what the authorities will say or do. Jesus has one commitment. He will proclaim the truth. It will lead him to the tomb, but it will lead him back out. And so while Pilate goes in and out and in and out and in and out, Jesus stands in the throne room, the true King. When you make a decision, how do you decide what to do? Do you ask yourself, what are people going to think about me if I do this? Do you ask, will this get me what I want? Do I even know what I want? Will this help me get ahead? What what is truth? You can get lost in this. And the truth will become just one other thing that you have to think about. One factor, maybe big, maybe small, in your decision. And you can find yourself like Pilate, doing things that you know to be wrong, doing things that you do not want to do. Because you've lost the connection between truth and duty. You have separated deciding what is right from deciding what to do. If you let yourself be defined by what people want from you, or what you want from other people, what you want in your career, in your life, in your job, or just for dinner, or anything, honestly, anything other than Jesus Christ, you will end up like Pilate, out of breath, running in and out and in and out, trying to figure out what the world wants from you. Doing things you know to be wrong and asking yourself, what is truth? But if you devote yourself to the truth, you cannot falter. Presbyterians have long held that pursuing the truth will lead you to God. This is one of the fundamental convictions of the church. Pursuing the truth will lead you to God. That's why Presbyterians have historically been unafraid of the truth. That's why Presbyterians go out and they build schools and institutes of higher learning, and why we count among ourselves so many great scientists and mathematicians and students of the world, because we believe that studying the world, studying and pursuing the truth will lead us to God. We are not afraid of anything that we might find in science or anywhere else, because all of it, we believe, will lead us to God. In the Book of Order, it says that there is an inseparable connection between truth and duty. And to pursue the truth is to find Christ. To seek the truth is to seek Christ, who came for this and for nothing else, to testify to the truth. To be a Christian is not just to know what is right, but also to do what is right. Because deciding what to do and deciding what is right should be for us the same thing. To be a Christian is to stand firm for Christ above all other obligations, other loyalties, other desires, fears, or anxieties. If we can hang on to that truth, if we can hold on to what it is, then we will find Christ. If we can make deciding what is right and deciding what to do the same thing, then we will find ourselves in the image of Christ. It may not be easy, but nothing good ever is. It might lead us to the grave, but it's the only thing that will lead us out again. The truth that is revealed in Jesus Christ. And if we can do this, then we will know what he meant when he said, I am the way and the truth and the life. And we will know what he meant when he says, I am the resurrection and the light. And we will go forth from this place to be an Easter people, proclaiming the truth, the incredible good news that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not life or death or angels or things present or things to come. Nor anything else in all creation. Brothers and sisters, let us cling to the truth. Let us cling to Christ, knowing that Christ will lead us home. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.